When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller. My special guest today, the Service Safety Director, Brian Kuhn.
Mike, glad to be here.
How you doing, buddy? Good?
Good. Yeah, I've been here a few times and always enjoy coming talking city with you. And of course, before I was with the city, with the county treasurer, and I think you had me in here a couple times. We talked about collections and fun stuff like that. So appreciate that.
Well, I know you're busy. There's a lot of stuff going on in the city right now, and I know that everybody talks about the streets department.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, well, Brian's coming on Friday, so we'll go right to him and find out what's happening.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a little bit about the projects that we have going on right now. And these right now are indeed city projects, and they're paid for through city funds. A couple years ago, there was a levy on the ballot that the voters approved. The money was strictly to be used for the streets, and that's where this money comes from. This levy generates around $2 million, a little over $2 million each year. And so we prepare the plan for our streets, and the money comes from that $2 million. And I would mention up front that 2 years ago, before we started the street paving program, City Council requested that we had have an outside third-party person come in and evaluate our streets to see which ones were the worst, because we want to spend the money where it made sense. So
well, and you make a good point. I don't want to interrupt you, but people always ask, how do they do that? How do they say, well, that street's worse than mine, or that one's better than mine?
Yeah, so it's really a combination of two things, Mike. Number one, it's from the results of this study that was done by EMH&T, as I said 2 years ago. And the other one is average daily traffic count. And what that is when you're driving down the road and you go over the little rubber lines or the tubes, then they're counting the traffic. So, for example, I don't know if you know where Fay Avenue is, but it's just a little side street off of Fair. And the road condition isn't very good. It's pretty poor, but maybe 50 people, 20 people go over it a day. So, are you going to spend $100,000 to fix a street, that really affects 20 people? Or you're going to do a street, pay $100,000 that affects like 10,000 people or 5,000, whatever it might be. So that kind of goes into play. It does go into play. So the engineering department, they look at the results from EMH&T and the results from the daily traffic count to basically list the streets that are bad and highly traveled that need fixed. Right. And so last year was the first year of this program, and now we're in the midst of our second year, and the roads that are being done now, and some of your listeners I'm sure probably have driven on them during the process. Rainbow Drive is being completed. Independence Boulevard, which is off of Rainbow Drive, is being worked on. Marietta Road and Wheeling Road, and then Sells Road that connects those two. All those are under some form of construction right now. And it depending on how poor the road was as to what was being done. And it's interesting, I've been a service safety director now for like 18 months and didn't really know anything about roads except, drive on the right-hand side and don't cross the double line. It's amazing what you learn in a year about the streets. But so, like I said, right now we're in the process. Rainbow Drive is, I think, pretty much nearing completion, but the other roads are still quite a bit of work to do.
And this is repaving. I mean, because there's always the tar and chip or whatever they call that. So, I mean, this is complete repaving and restructuring.
Yeah, that's that's a good word to use, restructuring, rebuild the street. For example, what they did on Marietta Road was they tore up what was there, basically ground it up, and then it took it down to the bare dirt. And then the dirt, there was concrete powder mix that's applied along the top of the road, and then there's these machines that are huge mix up the concrete mix with the dirt. And what happens is that the concrete, and they inject some water, it makes like makes for the base, I guess, a strong base. And then they'll do like the tar and chip level, and then they'll do like 2 more coats, like a leveling coat and then a top coat, like a finishing coat. So you'll end up with like 4 different stages before everything gets striped, and hopefully these roads will last like another 20 years.
That's the next question. So, and then they'll do another study and all that, and go.
Yeah, well, we're working off of the study that was done a couple years ago. So, like 2016 roads that we're going to do, the engineering department's in the process of analyzing what those are going to be now.
So, how does this bid out then? Does it go to the lowest bidder or most qualified bidder? Or how
Yeah, really combination of those. That's a good question. So, actually, pretty like in the fall, we'll put out either the fall or like winter, basically. There'll be an announcement, a bid announcement that says, okay, the city of Lancaster is looking to have these, roads done, and there's certain specifications that are attached to that, and the crews, they know, what they're looking for. So then they'll have what's called a bid opening, and the service safety director is the person who opens those bids. So it's a set day that anybody that wants to bid, they'll either send, most of the people come personally, and then I'll sit and I'll open the bids, and I'll name the company. For example, like Shelley and Sands, and their bid is like $1,500,000. Kokosing, $1,800,000. So
is it the lowest bid then, or are there certain?
Yeah, no, it's the lowest bid, and then once those are open, you know who the lowest is. But then the engineering department will take those specifications and make sure that everything's met. Because sometimes you could have a bid difference of like $500,000, and you're thinking somebody missed something. So you just don't automatically say you've got the job. So yeah, this whole process, what we're going through now, started kind of like this time last year.
There's only a time window. I mean, they can't do this 12 months a year, obviously. So
no.
And some people don't realize, well, why don't they just do it in wintertime? And
that's a good point. And I know we get complaints of like, why are you doing this now when school's in session? And if we had our choice, we would have had it done like in May. But number one, the asphalt plants, they don't even open till like April, mid-April. So the temperature has to be just right, like it's 50 degrees before these asphalt companies will start the plant. So number one, we have to wait for that. Number two, they're just not worried about the city of Lancaster. They might, when you're driving up in Columbus, you see maybe 4 lanes of traffic being done. So they've got crews out, and not only in the state of Ohio but other states. So we have to fit their time table. And another thing, sometimes, for example, on Wheeling Road by St. Bernadette's church, that area, there was a new water line put in. So we had to wait for the water department to get in to replace the water line to make connections to all the houses again. And because we wouldn't want to pave in May and then tear it up in June, And this year was also, if you remember, it was pretty rainy June and July, I think, and so that pushes things off too. So, do we want to be doing roads that affect traffic, heavy traffic for schools this time of the year? No, but a lot of times we're at the mercy of contractors, or if it's a federal job or a state job, Ohio Department of Transportation, they tell us this is when we're going to do it and this is what we're going to do, and we say okay.
If somebody has just a concern, why is my street been? Should they call their councilman, or should they just call your office, or just to find out when's the next schedule coming out?
Yeah, they could just call the mayor's office or the service safety director's office, and we'll make sure they get to the right place. But if they called the street department, Lancaster Department of Transportation, LDOT, they'll have the schedule, or the engineering department. But sometimes it's just easy to call the service safety director or the mayor, and then we'll direct them to the proper place.
In addition to the street paving that's going on, all those things, you're working on safe routes for the schools.
Yeah, the safe routes to schools. This is a federally funded program, and I believe when she's a judge now, Judge Vandervoort was the law director. She put in that she was the lead on trying to get the safe routes to school program or funds for the city of Lancaster, and again, unfortunately, right now there's sidewalks being put in on Eastwood. It depends on where you are on Eastwood, but sometimes it's on both sides of the street, sometimes it's on one. But it's for foot traffic for the children that that are going to school, that are going to Medill or walking on down to Lancaster, or excuse me, not Medill, but Thomas Ewing. Or going down to the high school, and that's going on right now. And again, we've had multiple complaints about, why are you doing this when school's open? And again, this is a federal program, and so when it's free, it's 100% paid for. It's
hard to say no.
It's hard to say no, and we just don't have control over it. It's like a gun law or something. It's like the city, we can't affect that. So it's just, again, kind of out of our hands, but we can help work with the contractors and suggest that, hey, don't start this until 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever it might be. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Is that selected the same way? Is there a group that says we need to do this for this area? Or?
Yeah. Like once the funding came in, we knew we had the funding source. Then it was internally where we said, okay, where's the biggest need for the sidewalks for the kids, right, for the children, and we knew some of the schools were going to be torn down, so we knew we didn't want to do that. Other ones there's sidewalks in place, so this one, the Thomas Ewing, which probably will always be there, or another
right,
similar school in the high school. So I'm not certain when that decision was made. It was before I started here, but it seems like in spite of things, it's going smoothly, and the sidewalks look nice, and of course it's not only for the children but for the neighborhood.
Right. I know we're talking a lot about different projects, and people. When I talk to them, the Columbian Building downtown, and there's a lot of activity going on there too.
Yeah, the Columbian Building, that started before I began as the service safety director, but since that time, and I've been in this position since February last year, I've been involved somewhat in what they call owners meetings, where the construction manager, the mayor, and myself, Jackie Long from the courts to represent the judges, because they're the ones who are paying for this building, right, through court fines and fees, court fees, not fines. But I've been lucky enough to be involved in the meetings, and that project, I think it was originally supposed to be finished like in August or September maybe, and now of course here we are, right, basically in September, and the meeting we had last week, they said it looks like it might not be till December that everything's finished, and so we have our fingers crossed that that's going to be it. There's a lot of work to do there yet, but we're confident that the contractors, they know what they're doing, and they keep telling us that once they call it the trades, the plumbers, the electricians, the drywallers, once everything's stabilized and ready to go, then they can go in and move quickly. So that's our hope, and so what's going to happen, Mike, is the courts will be there that are currently housed at the municipal building there at the corner of Main and Broad Street. So they're going to move over there. So the judges will be Judge Fields, and currently Judge Martin's there, but he didn't run for re-election. I believe it'll be David Landefeld will have a court. The prosecutor's office, they're currently housed at an office space on Chestnut Street. So the prosecutor / law director's office will have offices there. Probation, which is also in City Hall,
Right.
they're going to move there. So I think that's everybody that like court-related type items are going to be moved to the Columbian Building. And I don't know if you've driven by lately. They've got some of the new windows that are like 10 foot high and wide. It's looking nice, and what an improvement that'll be for downtown.
And we talked about just a little bit earlier economic development and what the Columbian means and things like that. And I know you're working on a spec building coming in, and just talk a little bit about economic development in Lancaster.
Yeah, well, I'll start back with the Columbian. There's probably by the time everything's done, say 8 to 9 million. I know that's a big range, but 8 to 9 million that's going into that property. And as you may or may not know, Brad and Penny Hutchinson bought from the city for, I know it's $1, but they bought the mid-op building, and they'll probably put $6 or $7 million into that to fix that up. For the bottom will be retail, and the top floors will be office space, professional office space. And if you ever want to have somebody interested in to talk about that, Penny, I'm sure, would be glad to come and talk with you. But that's being done. The Essex building, if you remember where that is on Columbus Street and Wheeling, there's talk and I think this is public knowledge, of business coming in, and the bottom floor would be like retail again, but then it would be like townhomes, condos, apartments, that type of thing.
Wow.
And what I think that most of the storefronts on Main Street, from High Street down to Memorial Drive are pretty full now. At least since I've been in my position, I think it's the most that I've seen for a long time. So there's a lot of buzz about downtown, and Dave Scheffler, he's probably been on your show before, the director of Destination Downtown. He's really breathed fresh air into that program, I think, and his slogan is like "Catch the Vibe." It's just downtown is really looking good, and of course we don't want to take away from. So the city's a big place,
Sure.
And you mentioned the spec building, and out at the industrial park, which maybe some residents don't know that we have an industrial park, but there's some big buildings out that way on Mill Park Drive, and in Lancaster Port Authority, which isn't the city of Lancaster, but kind of that you could draw a dotted line, kind of affiliated somewhat with the city. They're building what we call a spec building out there. It's going to be, I think, a 54,000 square foot building, and the reason for that is like the economic development again. When people come into the city, that we have something an empty building, like you can move in, it's move-in ready, that type of thing.
And there's some great companies out there in that area right now. SRI, Electrotech is out there. Crown Cork and Seal, MPW is out there.
The Lancaster Corrugated.
U.S. Corrugated is out there.
Yeah. Sorry. And Martin Partitions, they're putting the finishing touches on a building. They moved from the Carroll area.
Right.
I think their building may have been a victim of the Carroll Interchange. Which ends up being good for us because I think we grabbed like 50 to 100 jobs from them. But as you mentioned, all those different businesses out there in the SRI, that would be another cool program to have, the J.C. John Charles or Bob Muckenstern. Just two great guys that they truly love the city of Lancaster, and it's nice that they brought jobs from Canada.
Sure.
So a lot of times you hear about jobs going overseas or out of the country. Well, in this case, they're coming from another country into Lancaster.
Absolutely. You've been in this job 18 months now.
I would say. Yeah.
Anything when you first got in, you just thought, "Well, I wasn't ready for this. I just wasn't."
I was surprised, to be honest with you, and me, I'm a straight shooter. I was amazed at the responsibility of the service safety director. You know, I talked to the mayor because I was kind of like interviewed, I guess. You want to make sure you had the right person for the job. And somewhat prior service safety directors. But I didn't know what the service safety director did before I started. And you're the number 2 guy in the city. Most everybody reports to me, and then I report to the mayor. But it's interesting, Mike. Like in the morning, I could have a meeting with the fire chief about hiring a new person. I could be out. Like yesterday, I was out talking to crews that are doing the paving. I could be in the meeting with the Columbian regarding the Columbian Building and what's going on there. And then in the afternoon, I could be talking with the chief of police about the patrol cars and the fleet. And then talking with Mike Pettit, our economic development director, about companies looking at the city and what we're going to do. And that's just like one day, you know, and it's like that every day. Just when you walk through the door, you don't know what you're going to work. Well, most of the times I have a schedule, but there's days when there's nothing, and those are the days that go by so quick.
Do you communicate with other directors in other towns?
You know, no, I haven't really. When I was treasurer, I reached out to several other treasurers and to see what kind of programs they did, and made some nice changes, I think, for the county treasurer's office. But I haven't. Seems like I haven't had the opportunity, the free time to do it here. And also lately, we've been working with the schools. You know, there's 3 new schools that opened: Mount Pleasant, Tarhee Trails, and Gorsuch West. And there's some traffic flow problems with Tarhee Trails and the city. I've been working with Jerry Rainey of the city, or excuse me, the school. Just like we're here to help you. If you just tell us what you need us to do, because we get a lot of calls complaining about the traffic flow, and it's not necessarily our issue. It's the school procedures that they've got to work on, but we're here to try to help, and we've been doing that. So hopefully, as the weeks go by, the flow will be a lot better for everybody.
Is there anything that maybe stood out and said, "Boy, this is real. I didn't know about this. This is really good. I mean, this is something that I didn't understand this." Or
yeah, you know, the thing that really surprised me is. Like what the police do, that you know, you're the average citizen, which I was before I got this job, and then like you're working in it. But you know, you see the police cars, or they got pulling people over, they're reporting the accidents, and like I didn't see much more than that, or didn't know what all they do, but you know that they stop domestic violence, they deal with rape, they deal with drugs, they deal with theft, they help prevent suicides. They do a lot, and they do it, day in, day out. And
do you break down your day into, okay, I'm going to spend, I know it changes every day, as you just talked about, but short-term goals, long-term goals, I want to get this done by 6 weeks. Or
yeah, well, the position I'm in right now, and there's an election coming up, and my job, like I only have maybe 4 months left in my job, the service safety director position, and something's going to happen one way or the other. So, I mean, I can like help plan some other departments, and we talk about that. But for me to start something now that I don't know that I can finish, I probably wouldn't look long range like that right now, because this happened when I was a treasurer, when I knew I was going to leave the treasurer's job and take the service safety director position. There was a couple things that I was like close to moving on with, and then I thought, well, that's not really fair to the person behind me, the new treasurer, because maybe he or she wouldn't want to do it that way or whatever. So I just kind of said, here, when I left, like, here's what I was working on. If you want to move forward, you can.
The time has flown by. We just have a few minutes left. Graduate OU, the Harvard on the Hawkins.
Yeah.
Predictions for football? I mean,
well, I've heard OU team should do pretty well this year. hoping, I know it's early because it's just
Sure.
the first game hasn't been played, but we're hoping that we'll be bowl eligible this year. I've got a daughter that actually following in Dad's footsteps that moved her into OU. I think it was last Saturday. Time flies.
One of those days.
But yeah, and you know, as you know, I'm an accountant,
Sure,
CPA,
yeah.
and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and she's majoring in accounting also. So hopefully
That's
that'll go
fantastic.
well for her. And the business school at OU, I think, is probably one of the, I don't know, I've never seen it listed, but I think it's in the top maybe 10 or 15 in the country. So that's nice to have resources like that so close. And of course, you know, we have a High University regional campus here, and I just wrapped up teaching there. I taught there like 17 years, and then with my
Wow,
current
really?
yeah,
I didn't know that.
with my current position and potential
Sure,
future,
yeah.
I told him I can't
Can't do it.
go on anymore. Just it's too time consuming. But you know, talk about the service safety director position again, real quick. You're in meetings a lot, like almost daily, and with all the different departments, and not only within the city but outside the city, other like the Route 33 Alliance. It's amazing what you know or can learn about something, the city
Sure.
and the county in a short period of time by being heavily involved.
Right.
And I know you could go, you can watch city council meetings. I know you're a city council member. And you just kind of get, honestly, like the tip of the iceberg with that. And I know there's council committee meetings where you get a little more involved in a certain area. But when you're involved, the day-to-day
Right.
operations and you're in, making decisions, it's interesting, like the streets, the fire department. I talked about the police, the fire
Right.
too. They save lives. I would say we're probably in the top 3 of the state of our training and our quality of people. We've gotten the fire department's gotten some awards that speak highly of
Right.
them. So I didn't mean to focus on the police.
No,
Our safety
you did.
our safety forces overall are great, and I think there might have been an article in the paper. I know there was something in Facebook the other day. I just mentioned it real quick, where there was paramedics were on a run, and they ran over like a soccer ball ran out into the street, and they ran over it, and
Yep.
they broke it or busted it.
Uh-huh.
So those guys went and they got another ball to replace, and they took it back and gave it to the person who lost the ball. And it's little things like that go on, honestly, through all the departments that the public, they don't know, because it affects one person or a family. And it's nice to work with people that are that way.
Well, Brian, it's been great having you on. I appreciate it very much. We'll look forward to having you on again.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mike.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller. And remember, until we meet again, let's make a difference.
In 1929 in Chicago, a gentleman by the name of Marion Wade, a former minor league baseball player, started the company. It was just a moth-proofing company then. In 1952, it expanded to carpet cleaning and pioneered what is now called outsourcing. And the Sidwells wanted a community that had a lot of churches, had a lot of soccer opportunities, their kids love soccer, and a good Parks and Rec department, so they chose Lancaster. And so in 1980, they moved the franchise here in Lancaster, to 6th Avenue. But then in 2002, Todd George, current owner, purchased the franchise from them. And in 2004, he bought a building that's on Mulberry Street, and that's where the franchise is located currently. I'm Jay Johnson, General Manager of Service Master Clean by Todd George, where we guarantee if it's not done right the first time, we'll do it again.
Service Master Clean by Todd George, 740-687-1077. 740-687-1077.